welcome you all to the Donovan Live Postgame Show right here on WKYC's Facebook Live. We are starting a little bit later tonight because it's the schedule night. As we surmised last week, we thought that sometime this week there might be the release of the NFL's regular season schedule. Lo and behold, it is tonight. So we will give you kind of a first look along with Jimmy and myself and take a look at the Browns' opponents. We knew who they were going to play, Jimmy, all the opponents. You always know who you're going to play when you finish the regular season. But this is when you're going to play, the order of games, and of course, you know, those out there are going to play the time-honored game known as the schedule game to come up with a way in their minds that the Browns are going to make it to the playoffs this year. We'll put it up here on the screen for everybody to see in a second, but your first, before we look at each game, your first overall thought.
Well, I always look to the opening game of the season because I think it's a monumental game, and it's been an incredibly high wall for the Browns to get over since they've come back in 1999. They've only won the opener once.
One time.
Okay, Jeff Garcia was the quarterback that day when the Browns beat the Baltimore Ravens in what turned out to be Butch Davis's last year as the head coach of the Browns. And I really feel it really has been something that, at least here in Cleveland, and maybe the other NFL teams feel this, but I feel like when you lose the opener, I feel you go 0-2. It just seems to be you have so much time to prepare for it. And actually, the 4 preseason games that you play are all dictated by what you want to do and who you want to play and how much you want them to play in the preseason so that they're ready and so that they're not hurt or questionable at all for the opening game of the season. So opening up against Pittsburgh, again, I think this will be the 5th time since the Browns have come back in 1999.
Second year in a row, right?
Yeah, that they have opened up against the Steelers. I think it's not a bad time to get the Steelers because of the current state of the Steelers, and that is they typically don't play Ben Roethlisberger during the preseason. And I think that, you know, they play him a little bit in the 3rd game, but that's about it.
That's it.
Le'Veon Bell, you don't know if he's going to show up at all because of his contractual situation. When he didn't do that last year in training camp and in the preseason and showed up here for the opening game of the season, he was not the Le'Veon Bell that he was 4 or 5 weeks down the road and for the rest of the season. I would love to see the Browns win the opening game for a lot of reasons. It would get this huge monkey off their back. But I just think it really sets the course of the season, and it takes you in a place because it just seems when you go 0-1, you blink and you're 0-3.
Well, and the other thing, it's a home game and it's a division game. And I just think, I've always felt this, and I'm sure you agree, you're not going to get to a point of being, you know, turning a corner until you can start to beat teams in your division on a consistent basis. I'm not talking about going 6-0, but it would be nice to go 3-3 against your division opponents. And in those 8, it'd be nice to be 4-4 or better at home. I mean, so you got to start winning those home games, and you got to start winning those division games at some point before you can even start fantasizing about the playoffs.
Yeah, it's you know, that's their goal. I think I really believe that's a strategy they use a week from tonight when they draft, too. I think they draft according to the division. Because you realize you play those guys twice every regular season. You have to start winning inside the division. It's half of your schedule. So I really believe that's true. And the inability for them to win in the division has become a real problem because it has wiped out rivalries and the potential of rivalries. I mean, to us, a game against Pittsburgh is very, very important. I dare say, though, that the Steelers take a look at that and say, our new rival appears to be the Ravens. And, you know, the Browns, maybe it will come back at some point in time, but it doesn't come back until you beat them.
Exactly. Now, after the Browns open up at home against the Steelers on September 9th, first road game, interesting one, down at the Superdome against Drew Brees and the Saints. And this is why I really hope that the Browns, and you've talked about it, are really going to be bolstering their defense, be it their pass rush and in their secondary, because you're going to get tested with Roethlisberger right out of the chute and then Drew Brees in week 2.
This is why I would draft Bradley Chubb,
exactly.
to beef up that pass rush, along with Myles Garrett and Ogba and Jamie Collins and all those guys, because you're going to need that. It really is amazing, but the Browns have done well down there in recent times, and really since they've come back. Remember, they won their first game ever.
Yeah,
and
that's
when
right.
they came back on the Hail Mary, Tim Couch to Kevin Johnson, that got them their first win. They re-entered into the NFL in 1990. Then they've had a couple of other big wins there.
That 2010 game always stands out to me, that Colt McCoy
game.
And the Browns defense.
Yeah, and the Browns kind of emptied out the playbook that year. They had a reverse pass on a kickoff return, and McCoy played very well. But I'll tell you who helped them out that day. Scott Fujita. Scott Fujita had played for the Saints. It was on their Super Bowl team. Then he joined the Browns, and he was really personally revved up to play against New Orleans. But he kind of self-coached the Browns that week, and they were really ready. Fujita had a great game. They had a great win down there.
David Bowens had two interceptions that day, didn't he? I think.
They really played well.
Yeah.
I mean, they played very, very well that day. They just had an amazing day. Everything worked that day. And that was when they got on a little run. If you remember, they beat them. They beat the Patriots. They blew the Patriots out here with Tom Brady. And then lost the next week to the Jets in overtime, which, again, they should have won.
Yeah, and that kind of ended up stopping that momentum and really kind of started, I think, Eric Mangini's fate at that point. The Browns will actually get a primetime game this year. We didn't suspect it. When you're 0-16, you usually don't get such things. But on Thursday, September 20th, back at First Energy Stadium on a Thursday night against the New York Jets. Now, that could be very interesting to see. We have an idea who's going to be quarterbacking the Browns, Tyrod Taylor. But it'll be interesting to see who's going to be the quarterback of the New York Jets by then, by the time we get to week 3 of the regular season.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, Josh McCown gave them a great year last year. I mean, he really did. He played very, very well for them. But they're going to be picking third, and they moved up in the draft to the number 3 spot so that they could pick a quarterback. So whoever they pick, and a lot of people kind of target them for either Baker Mayfield or Josh Rosen, depending upon what happens in front of them, and they don't have to wait too long with 2 picks, the Giants just before them and the Browns up above them. You don't know what's going to happen there. But I would say this, Todd Bowles, is in a situation where he really needs to win.
Yes.
So I don't know if whoever they draft in the first round, if they would commit to that guy right away. They did bring McCown back, I think, for that kind of reason. He's the perfect guy
and they've got
to counsel a quarterback. Yeah, but that's a funny deal. I don't even know if Bridgewater's physically going to be able to play. It's a $500,000 deal, which in the NFL gets you valet parking.
Yeah, exactly right. So after that quick turnaround, the Browns will have the Saints on a Sunday, short week against the Jets on a Thursday. Then you get a 10-day break. And the Browns will need it because they'll have their only West Coast trip of the year to wrap up September. On Sunday the 30th, they'll go out to Oakland to play the Raiders and take a look at John Gruden. And you know what you're going to get player-wise with the Raiders. You're going to have Derek Carr and Khalil Mack and Cooper. But you're going to have a new coach there. And I'm curious to see how
I have to tell you, it's when he re-entered and got the job and he got $100 million.
Yes.
Okay, to go and coach the Raiders. It was fascinating because every year you waited to see if John Gruden was going to leave the broadcast booth and go to the sidelines. And of course, people had him everywhere, even in college jobs. Okay. But since he's taken the job, it's been very quiet out there, other than the fact that he cut his punter,
exactly.
Marquette King, and he was quickly snapped up by Denver. But it's been a very, very quiet offseason with Gruden and what he's going to do with that team. So, I mean, they were a disappointment last year. I think a lot of people thought they were definitely going to be a playoff team and a factor in the AFC race to see who could win the American Football Conference, but it didn't pan out at all. They had injuries, they had them early, they lingered, and they did not play well, and it cost Jack Del Rio his job.
Yeah, so that'll be John Gruden's job. The Browns will see him now in week 4, and then back home after the long West Coast trip, you're back home on October 7th to start the month of October with another division game. The Baltimore Ravens will be in town at 1 o'clock. Again, with the Ravens, Jimmy, I mean, it's another home division game, and it's against a team that I think is, I don't know what your assessment of the Ravens is. It's last year for Ozzie Newsome. There's a lot of stuff going on in Baltimore.
Yeah, there really is. They had people turn them down at the free agent table, and they have they brought RG3 in to back up Joe Flacco. Some people have linked Lamar Jackson to them. As the possibility of going there, the quarterback out of Louisville and a former Heisman Trophy winner. It's not your typical Ravens the way the Ravens have been built. Now, I don't know what they're going to do in the draft. Typically, they draft Alabama players.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll wait on that. But, I kind of get the impression they don't want to admit they're rebuilding, but I think they are rebuilding. Now, John Harbaugh had a funny situation. I mean, I think there was a point in time last year where the owner felt like he might have to make a change at head coach, which is really, really strange. Ozzie leaving is a unique situation because we know so much about him from his years here. It's been a very stable organization, especially once Harbaugh went in there and Brian Billick left, but it seems to be rebuilding right now.
Yeah, everything's
retooling.
Yeah, so we'll see them in the start up October. And then, do you remember the last team the Cleveland Browns beat in a regular season game? I do. The then San Diego, now Los Angeles Chargers at First Energy Stadium. They return after a close game last year in L.A., back here on the 14th of October against the Chargers. And,
they are a team that they do not like coming east.
No, they don't.
So, I mean, they hate it. They definitely didn't like it on Christmas Eve a couple of years ago. They were not mentally here. But the week before that game, they were in Chicago. And then I believe they might have won in Chicago and then went back home and came back here and then lost. But they typically do not play well here. It's Norv Turner came here 1 year early in the year. Trent Richardson on a rainy, cold October day or September day even. And Trent Richardson hit them with an early touchdown, and the Browns ended up winning the game, with only one score in the game. So sometimes, you can get them on a little jet lag. We'll see what happens.
On Sunday, October 21st, the Browns will go to Tampa Bay, and I would imagine it'll be much more comfortable on October 21st than going down there as often as the Browns have had to do on like August 21st when it feels like 95 degrees down there and it's rainy like it was last year. Tampa Bay is an interesting team. We saw them. We talked a lot about them last year. I remember, they were highly thought of because they were on Hard Knocks, and they really thought that Jameis Winston was going to have a big breakout MVP type year, and that they were going to really break out themselves, and they just never were able to get on track last year.
No, I mean, sometimes it's like when a team is really picked to do well in preseason and they become kind of a fashion team that everyone kind of hops. They become the flavor of the week, and they fell into that category. You're right, and but doing it and having it predicted for you are two very different things, and they were not ready to do that. I think they go as Jameis Winston goes, and until he really stabilizes himself, and week in and week out, he's the guy. They had lost Mike Evans for an extended period of time.
Big.
They have running back trouble there, and I think that you go down there. You're right. I mean, going down there in August, the last couple of years in preseason has been brutal.
I'm telling you, if Barkley falls like past 4. I would not be shocked a week from now to see Tampa Bay make a move up to get him, to get somebody to be that third piece to go with Winston and Evans. Just a thought there. The good news, Jimmy, is that the Browns will not finish up the season at Heinz Field, which feels like that happens every year. The bad news is, though, you'll go in late October, October 28th, just before Halloween, to wrap up the month of October and wrap up the Steelers very early kind of in the season before the bye week.
Yeah, and I guess we will not have the annual Landry Jones game then.
No,
I would think
that
unless Big Ben is not healthy, we will see Big Ben play in that game. The last, the years where we have gone over there, Pittsburgh's playoff fate has been decided where they're going to be seated, who they're playing, what their situation is. So they typically have been resting all of their key starters, and especially on offense. And Roethlisberger would sit down, and Landry Jones would play, but that will not be happening in October, unless Big Ben is not 100% healthy.
Now, the last time the Cleveland Browns played the Atlanta Falcons, you got to go back to 2014 at a time when the Browns were at their peak in this decade, when they were 7-4 and Brian Hoyer was quarterbacking. That was in Atlanta. This year, Sunday, November 11th, will be the Atlanta Falcons. Actually, I'm sorry, I missed a week. I'm sorry. Forget the Falcons for a second. Let's get the Chiefs, because this will be John Dorsey against his former team. Sunday, November 4th will be Browns hosting the Chiefs, 2 straight home games before the bye week. at 1 o'clock, and it'll be not Alex Smith as the starting quarterback. We're going to see a first-year starter down there. At least we suspect as much. Yeah. And a kid that Dorsey spent a lot of time scouting and looking at. We'll get to Dorsey in a second because I want to talk to you more about what he said today. But this is going to be an interesting look at a Chiefs team that is, I don't want to say they've taken a step back, but they've kind of taken an interesting step away from the guy that had been their franchise quarterback.
Yeah, so Patrick Mahomes is the guy that they traded up to get. They got in front of the Browns to do it last year in the draft. They realized Cleveland really liked him. The Browns really did like him.
Yes.
And we're sitting there at, the number 12 spot. And I think, obviously they weren't going to take Deshaun Watson and didn't. But I think they would have definitely taken Patrick Mahomes if he was there. Kansas City sniffed that out and went up to 10 to go get him. He sat the 1 year. He played in the last game of the regular season because they knew what their playoff situation was. And, they put all their chips on him. Dorsey maneuvered that deal to go get Patrick Mahomes, and now he'll see it play out in front of his own eyes.
Right in front of his eyes to see how it works. Then the following week, then we get to the Falcons. Then you get to Matt Ryan and company. And, the Falcons, a team that came oh so close in 2016 to winning the Super Bowl. They still have so many pieces and parts there from that championship team. It's going to be another game where, I really hope, just like with that Saints game, I really hope the Browns' pass rush and secondary is ready for a big test.
Yeah, I think so. They've played them well. They went down to Atlanta in the year Brian Hoyer played in. And actually, that was Josh Gordon's first game back.
It was.
After a long suspension. And he came back, and he was... he was good, but he didn't know the plays. They ended up blowing a lead. Hoyer threw, I think, 3 interceptions in the game. Maybe 2 of them weren't his fault, though, because Gordon ran to wrong spots on the field. Luckily, Hoyer put together a drive in the last seconds. Billy Cundiff kicked a field goal, and they ended up winning the game, which was an amazing win for them at the time. But it was their last win
was the last one,
of the season, and it all fell apart after that. They played them here. The last time they played them here, they led the entire game, and then Matt Ryan got off the deck late and beat them. He's a great player. They're an unfulfilled team. I really think they should have beaten the Eagles in Philadelphia last year, but Philly got by them on a 4th down play. They were in the red zone ready to win the game and couldn't get it in there on 4 cracks.
Yep. I mean, at some point, you just sit there and you go, are they like the Browns of the late? Of course, those Browns teams never got to the Super Bowl, but they've come close a couple of times. They hosted the NFC Championship game, I think, in 2012, lost to Colin Kaepernick and the 49ers, made it to the Super Bowl in 2016, blew a 28-3 lead to the Patriots, got back to the playoffs last year, and couldn't punch in a close situation. At some point, you got to break through, and we'll see if Atlanta will do that this year. The Browns will have their bye then on November 18th, and then right before Thanksgiving, come back at it on, or actually, this will be after Thanksgiving, Sunday the 25th of November. First look at the Cincinnati Bengals. The Browns will play them twice in the final 6 weeks of the year. First look at the Bengals, Jimmy, and it's always interesting when you go down to Cincinnati with Hugh Jackson. A.J. McCarron won't be on the other side this year.
Hugh will do.
So there will not be the Hugh 50-yard sprint. But this is going to be interesting to see where the Browns are in relation to where the Bengals are.
Yeah, I think so. I think Cincinnati in free agency tried to shore up something that happened to them the year before, which is what they lost in free agency. They lost offensive linemen. They lost Kevin Zeitler. They lost Andrew Whitworth, their great left tackle, and that hurt them all year last year. That's something that really hurt them. That was a really good offensive line that they had when Hugh was there and they were rolling and Dalton was playing well. But they really suffered through the last couple of years. They've suffered losses on the coaching staff. Jay Gruden leaving, Hugh leaving, Mike Zimmer leaving. Okay, so they've lost that. Then they lost Marvin Jones, Mohamed Sanu. They lost those offensive linemen. So they were a really good team. Now, they did not win it when they were really supposed to win it. In fact, they can't win a playoff game.
Right.
And that's been a big problem. But I think they've tried to piece it back together through free agency to get them back and going, because the window's open with Dalton.
Yes,
I mean, Dalton's ready to go. He's ready to play very well. He has not been the same quarterback since Hugh left, though.
Yeah.
I will say that.
Then you start December with a really, really interesting team that I think it could be very good this year. December 2nd at Houston against the Texans. And you just think, Jimmy, if Houston can stay healthy, if they can keep J.J. Watt healthy, if they can keep Deshaun Watson healthy, they've got all the pieces, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They really do. Keeping the quarterback healthy is going to be very important. And of course, the way he plays, with a lot of, as they call it, RPO, run pass option. And you have to play that with him because that's what he is. He's an athlete, is Deshaun Watson. So if you take away his legs and if you tie him into the pocket, you're really cutting, I think, more than 50% of his skill level away from his overall attack. So, but keeping him healthy is going to be a real issue because of the way he plays. And, of course, that's what happened to him last year when he got hurt. That happened in practice,
It did, right, yeah.
Yeah, so, I think a coach that could, Bill O'Brien, I think they're kind of waiting. Hey, we've gotten you the quarterback now, but he can say, yeah, I know he was there, but he got hurt. And
it's coming up to a no excuses year. Right. It's coming up to a no excuses year for them.
And I think an owner that's a little itchy, he wants to, he's tired of hearing about Dallas in Texas. They want to talk about the Texans.
Exactly.
He's probably tired of hearing about the Astros. Exactly. He may be tired about hearing about the Rockets.
Yeah, that's right. On the 9th of December, Browns will have a home game against Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers. A team that since making it to the Super Bowl in 2015, they're another one that just they can't seem to get it all together at the right time. And this is going to be a game where I just think that the Browns, have their, especially if they have their defense the way they want it to. I think that should be a great game. Look forward to that game.
That's a home game, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I would tell you that that's worth the price of admission, Cam Newton, to watch him play.
He's amazing.
Because he really is, he's a big, rugged quarterback. He's got a big arm, tremendous, off the charts athletically. He's a lot of fun. And chasing him around all afternoon is a difficult thing to do. But he can also put you back into the game. There are times that he can give you the ball with a turnover, with a questionable decision. So that could be a fun game. I mean, we went down there a couple of years ago, took the lead late in the fourth quarter, and couldn't hang on to it and lost the game. But
is that when Manziel got hurt?
He got hurt. He pulled his hamstring right at the end of the first half. Hoyer came in. And, he played very well. He hit Jordan Cameron.
That's right.
On about a 75-yard slant over the middle. They took the lead in the game, and then Cam Newton took them right down. And they could not cover Kelvin Benjamin that day, who's not there anymore.
Who's not there anymore, but he's a guy he was another one of those talented wide receivers that I'll blame Ray Farmer, that Ray Farmer passed on. He was an early second-round pick the Browns could have had. Interesting road game on the 15th. It's at Denver. I can't remember the last time the Browns went to Invesco Field at Mile High.
I think Peyton Manning was the quarterback.
Yeah, feels like it's been a long time.
It was a long day, I can tell you that. I don't think they stopped them that day. I think Peyton Manning just went down the field and chewed them up that day.
Yeah, I think it was one of those games like you just couldn't wait for Jimmy and Doug to get out of there, get on the plane, and come home. That game's marked as TBA, so I assume it's potentially for flex down the road, but probably a 4 o'clock late game, I would think. But we'll see on that one. And then the last two games of the year, December 23rd, wrap up the home portion of the schedule against the Bengals, and then again. We stay in the division. Happy New Year on the 30th, on the Sunday of December, at the Baltimore Ravens.
Well, it's by that time, the key thing I think is when you look at the Browns now, and this has always been the hope, is that by Thanksgiving, you would like to see some of the younger players, and of course there still are a lot of them, and there will be more added come next week, start to really contribute and play well. And you'd like to see the team, no matter what the record is at that point in time, you would like to see the team really start on a trajectory of, hey, we're going in every Sunday. We got a shot to win. We can win some of these games at the end of the year to send you into the offseason. Now, I'm not predicting playoffs. No question about it. But I am saying that the disappointment has been this lost feeling that you have. Really, Thanksgiving is kind of the line of demarcation sometimes. That's when playoff teams make that final push. But that's when teams that are having a dismal season, if it's going to completely go down the drain, it does at that point.
Yeah, and that's why I think coming out of that bye week and then going to Cincinnati on the 25th of November with 6 games to go. I mean, that's where I'm with you. That's when you start to see, your players. You start to figure out, okay, wow, that player is a gamer. This guy is a keeper. This wide receiver is doing this. I mean, you start to figure out who you've got as your future core, and you're not going into these games. God, please don't have a blowout. You're going into these games feeling like you said, you've got a shot to win.
Yeah.
That you're going to be competitive for 4 quarters, and you're going to leave it all out there, and you've got a shot to beat some of these teams. I'm not saying you're going to go to Denver and beat the Broncos. That's hard for any team in the NFL to do. But, to play the Bengals and 500 or better, maybe beat the Panthers at home, yeah, I think that's realistic to sit there and say that's what we're looking at doing.
Yeah,
to wrap up the season.
again, I mean, you just don't want to have that lost feeling of, we're dying to get this thing over with.
Right.
And, too many times we've had that. So it would be very, very refreshing and encouraging if you are in that kind of state of mind that you're going in every Sunday and saying, I'm really excited to see them play this week because of what they did last week, and maybe they can do it a little bit better this week and win. And that would be a great thing. That's the way you do it.
Yes.
That's the way you do it. Plus, they have to develop some kind of dominance somewhere.
Right.
And the first thing that typically teams that are rebuilding at the size scale that the Browns are is that you start winning at home.
Right.
And you have to start winning somewhere. The easiest place, not that it's easy anywhere, but the easiest place would be at home to develop some kind of a home field advantage that if people come in here, they say, wow, we're in for a tough afternoon.
Long afternoon. It's not going to be easy. I mean, and that's what you want. And I think fans, when you think about it as a goal for this year, I'd like to see the Browns 500 or better at home because that's 4 wins right there. And then, go out there, win a couple of games on the road, and you've improved.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 questions here to wrap up the show. Did you learn much of anything from John Dorsey today, or were his cards so close to the vest and the vest was so close to the chest that it was impossible to learn a thing?
It was impossible to learn anything. It really was. It really was impossible to learn anything. And, he wasn't going to. No. He has to do that. He has to have a press conference. They have to have an availability before the draft. He had it. He wasn't going to let anything out. He loves all the quarterbacks.
Of course he does.
I did not learn anything. I think it's a 2-horse race at the quarterback spot for them. I think people saying that he likes Josh Allen, number so high that he must like Josh Allen. I think that they would be foolish not to like Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
Think about this. At this time last year, a week away from last year's draft, there were a lot of people that said, if you need a quarterback, you're probably not going to get him in this draft.
Yep.
Okay? So if you're going to be bad, be really bad because you'll get Sam
Rosen
Darnold.
or Darnold. Yeah, I remember
you're going to get Darnold,
Yep.
and there he is. I mean, he's right there. Yeah,
you just have to turn the card in. You don't have to trade. You don't have to do anything crazy. You just take him. Should we read too much into the fact that certain players were not brought in with the 30 visits that are allowed pre-draft for draft candidates? Should we read too much into Chubb not being one of them? I think Barkley was on the list, and I think Fitzpatrick was on the list.
No, I don't think so. And, a lot of people say, well, that leads, Denzel Ward was in. But you got to remember, they can have him in because he's from Ohio State and he's a local kid.
Right.
So, I mean, that doesn't cost them not that it costs them anything, but it doesn't take away one of their visits.
Right.
I mean, that's the geographical advantage that they have with an Ohio State player or a kid that played around here and is from here. So that shouldn't lead you to say, well, Denzel Ward was in, but Minkah Fitzpatrick wasn't.
Right.
I think they spent enough time with these guys where they were.
Yeah.
I mean,
between pro days, combine, and whatever, Senior Bowl in some cases for these players.
Right. So I don't read anything into it because I think they're all high on their board.
Yeah. And stepping away from the NFL to the NBA for a second, the Donovan theorem was in full display last night. I wasn't able to watch the game. Thank you, migraine. But going back and looking at today, if LeBron doesn't score 40-plus points, the Cavs aren't in games like that, the Cavs aren't able to win. He had scored 45, and they still had to sweat out a victory last night.
Right. And I really believe that's true. So I think now going on the road, they need a second scoring option.
Yeah.
At the least, they need a second scoring option. And so far, they haven't had that. I mean, when what did he have Sunday? 26?
24, I think, or whatever.
Right in the mid-20s. They lost by 18.
Yeah.
Okay, so he had 46 last night, and Victor Oladipo is wide open for a 3 to tie the game, and you don't know what's going to happen there. So it's got to be Kevin Love or somebody else that's going to help out LeBron. But I think LeBron's got a healthy 30-plus type of night for them to be involved in that. I think the way they can go into Indianapolis and try and win with the current structure where they are at is they have to ride LeBron, they need a second scoring option, and they got to defend. You know, they have to defend.
They got to defend. I mean,
and I really think, they're in a series.
Oh, yeah. This is not going to be, obviously, it's going to be more than a 4. It'll be at least a 5-gamer. But, I mean, I think they may have to go back to Indiana again.
Yeah, could
happen. And play them in a Game 6. All right, we'll know more certainly after this weekend's over. Game 3 is tomorrow. Game 4 is Sunday night. We'll be back on Monday to talk more about that and get you closer and closer away here from the NFL draft 1 week from tonight. We're 1 week away, Jimmy. I can't believe it.
Yeah, it'll be great. It'll be great.
We can't wait. All right, for David Herberton over to my left and for Jimmy Donovan to my right, I'm Dave DiNatale. Thanks for watching the Donovan Live Postgame Show here on WKYC's Facebook Live.